He knelt before the chief priest, ready to be crowned. As Ogbunike raised the crown, a sudden chill swept through the air. Paul stiffened, his eyes widening in terror. "Peter!" he screamed, pointing at an empty space. Only Paul could see the ghost of his brother, blood dripping from his head. The spirit's eyes blazed with righteous fury as it advanced. "No! Stay away!" Paul shouted, leaping to his feet. The villagers gasped as Paul began to scream uncontrollably, clawing at his own face. He ran from the square, tearing off his robes. Paul ran through the village, the spirit of Peter haunting him at every turn. He stumbled into the market square, tearing his robes and shouting incoherently as he was flogged by an invisible force. Once upon a time, in the prosperous kingdom of Umuaka, the great King Olokun ruled with wisdom and courage. He had twin sons, Peter and Paul, who were destined to shape the future of the land. Peter, the elder by a few minutes, was known for his kindness and calm demeanor. Paul, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. Wicked, greedy, heartless, and disrespectful to even the elders. While the people adored Peter, they feared Paul, whose cruelty was unmatched. The kingdom of Umuaka was known for its wealth and peace. King Olokun, wise and just, had ruled for decades, earning the love of his people. His two sons, Peter and Paul, were the pride of the palace, but also its greatest challenge. As the king's health began to fail, the question of succession divided the kingdom. Peter was kind-hearted, loved by the villagers for his humility and fairness. He often walked among the people, helping farmers in the fields and sharing meals with the poor. Even the elders adored him, calling him the prince of the people. Paul, however, was feared and despised. Arrogant and greedy, he mistreated the palace staff and bullied anyone who crossed his path. His temper knew no bounds, and he dismissed the elders' wisdom with mocking laughter. "Paul as king will destroy us," the villagers whispered. "But Peter, he will bring us peace." King Olokun, unable to choose between his sons, sought the counsel of the chief priest, Ogbunike. The priest proposed a trial that would test their courage, wisdom, and the favor of the gods. "The gods will decide," the chief priest declared before the king and council. "Both sons must journey to the land of the dead and retrieve the forbidden python's egg. Only the one who returns with the egg will be crowned king." The forbidden python was no ordinary creature. It was the king of the evil forest, a monstrous serpent feared for its immense size and deadly venom. The task was considered impossible, but the decision was final. At the break of dawn, the entire kingdom gathered to send off the princes. The queen wept openly as she embraced her sons, though her heart was heavy with worry. "Peter, my child, stay safe," she whispered. She paused, struggling with her words. "Do not let greed lead you astray," Paul smirked. "Greed? Mother, you'll see. I will return as king." The villagers, although skeptical of Paul, wished the brothers well. As they stepped into the dense forest, the crowd prayed for their safe return. The evil forest was unlike any place the princes had ever seen. The trees were twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. A thick fog hung in the air, and eerie whispers surrounded them. "Stay close," Peter said, clutching his staff tightly. Paul rolled his eyes. "I don't need your advice. I can handle myself." Their first challenge came sooner than expected. As they trudged through the forest, a pack of wild hyenas emerged, their glowing eyes fixed on the brothers. The hyenas snarled and circled them, ready to attack. Peter quickly lit a torch from his bag, waving it to keep the beasts at bay. Paul, meanwhile, climbed a tree and shouted down, "Keep them busy! I'll find a way to escape!" Peter sighed but held his ground. With calculated movements, he drove the hyenas back until they retreated into the shadows. "You left me to fight alone," Peter said as Paul climbed down. "I was being strategic," Paul replied with a smirk. Peter shook his head, already regretting the journey with his brother. As the brothers continued, hunger and exhaustion began to set in. That was when they came across a clearing where a beautiful woman stood. She wore a white gown that shimmered like moonlight, and her voice was as sweet as a lullaby. "Welcome, brave princes," she said. "You must be hungry. Come, eat, and rest." Peter's instincts warned him to be cautious. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am a friend," she replied with a smile. "I wish to help you on your journey." Paul, too tired to care, rushed forward. "Finally, some hospitality!" He sat down and began to eat the roasted meat and ripe fruit she offered. Peter hesitated, watching as Paul devoured the food. Then, suddenly, the woman's form shifted. Her face became skeletal, and her hands grew into claws. The food in Paul's mouth turned to worms, and he began to choke. Peter grabbed the charm the chief priest had given him and chanted a prayer. The spirit screeched and vanished, leaving Paul gasping for air. "You're lucky I was here," Peter said, helping his brother to his feet. Paul glared at him, humiliated. If you're loving this story so far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling tales. After days of dangerous travel, they reached the heart of the evil forest. There, in a clearing surrounded by glowing mushrooms, lay the forbidden python. The serpent was enormous, its body as thick as a tree trunk. Its scales shimmered like gemstones, and its eyes burned with an unholy light. The forbidden python's egg, glowing faintly, rested beneath its coils. "We must be careful," Peter whispered. "The python will strike if we anger it." "You're scared," Paul sneered. "Watch and learn." Paul rushed forward, waving his machete. The python hissed and reared its head, striking at him with blinding speed. Paul barely managed to dive out of the way, landing in a heap. Peter approached slowly, singing the sacred melody the chief priest had taught them. The python's gaze fixed on him, its body relaxing as it listened. With steady hands, Peter reached out and gently took the egg. "Let's go," he said, cradling the egg carefully. Paul's face darkened with jealousy. On their way back, the brothers encountered a raging river. The water was filled with glowing spirits, their wails echoing across the forest. A narrow log bridge spanned the river, slick with moss and unstable. "We must cross carefully," Peter said, testing the bridge with his staff. Paul snorted. "I don't need your advice." As Peter crossed cautiously, Paul tried to run across. Halfway, he slipped and fell, his hand grabbing the edge of the log. "Help me!" he screamed, as the spirits reached for him with ghostly hands. Peter quickly dropped the egg on the far side and rushed back to pull his brother to safety. "You're welcome," Peter said as they reached the other side. Paul said nothing, but his hatred for Peter grew deeper. After hours of walking, the brothers came across a stream. Exhausted, they decided to rest and drink. Peter placed the egg carefully on the ground and bent down to scoop water with his hands. Paul's eyes flicked to the egg, and a dark idea formed in his mind. Grabbing a large stick from the bushes, he crept up behind Peter. Without hesitation, he struck his brother on the head. Peter collapsed, blood pooling around him. Paul smirked. "You were always too soft." He grabbed the egg and ran back to the village, leaving Peter's lifeless body by the stream. Paul returned to the kingdom with the egg. Greeted by cheers from the villagers, he handed the egg to the chief priest, boasting of his bravery. "What of your brother?" Ogbunike asked, his voice stern. Paul feigned sorrow. "A lion attacked us. I tried to save him, but it was too late." The queen collapsed in tears, while the villagers whispered among themselves. "Peter deserved the throne," an elder murmured. "Not this wicked prince." The day of Paul's coronation arrived. Dressed in royal robes, he knelt before the chief priest, ready to be crowned. As Ogbunike raised the crown, a sudden chill swept through the air. Paul stiffened, his eyes widening in terror. "Peter!" he screamed, pointing at an empty space. Only Paul could see the ghost of his brother, blood dripping from his head. The spirit's eyes blazed with righteous fury as it advanced. "No! Stay away!" Paul shouted, leaping to his feet. The villagers gasped as Paul began to scream uncontrollably, clawing at his own face. He ran from the square, tearing off his robes. Paul ran through the village, the spirit of Peter haunting him at every turn. He stumbled into the market square, tearing his robes and shouting incoherently as he was flogged by an invisible force. "The gods have spoken," Ogbunike declared. "Paul's evil deeds have been revealed. He is unworthy of the throne." The villagers mourned Peter, calling him a true prince who deserved to live. Peter's body was found by the stream, and a grand ceremony was held to honor him. Ogbunike performed a sacred ritual to lay his spirit to rest. With no heir remaining, the elders chose a wise and humble leader from among the villagers. Under his rule, the kingdom of Umuaka prospered once more. As for Paul, he wandered the forest, driven mad by guilt and haunted by the memory of his brother. The story of the twin princes became a legend, a reminder of the dangers of greed and the triumph of justice. Thank you for joining us on this journey through African tales. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories, timeless wisdom, and a journey into the heart of our culture. Your support helps keep these stories alive for generations to come. Your support helps us share these stories with the world.